Imagine being married to a man so reckless that his arrogance nearly gets your entire household slaughtered. That was Abigail's reality. Nabal, her wealthy but foolish husband, insulted David, the warrior anointed to be king. And David? He was coming for revenge, with 400 men, but Abigail wasn't just beautiful, she was wise. With nothing but her wits and a peace offering, she rode straight into danger, determined to stop a massacre. Would David listen? Or was bloodshed inevitable? Stay with us as we uncover the astonishing story of the woman who turned the tide of history with one bold act of wisdom. Abigail's story unfolds in ancient Israel, during the time of King Saul, when David was still a fugitive, running from the king's wrath. She was the wife of Nabal, a wealthy but arrogant man from Maon, whose vast herds grazed in the region of Carmel. The Bible describes Nabal as harsh and evil in his dealings, 1 Samuel 25 verse 3. But Abigail? She was the complete opposite, intelligent, discerning, and beautiful. Married to a man whose very name meant fool, Abigail must have learned early on how to navigate life with wisdom and patience. Though Nabal had riches, he lacked honor. His wealth had not made him generous, but greedy and prideful. Many might wonder, why was a woman of such grace and wisdom married to him? In ancient times, marriages were arranged, often based on status and wealth rather than love or compatibility. It's likely that Abigail had no say in the matter. While Nabal enjoyed his feasts and drank himself into a stupor, Abigail carried the silent burden of managing their household and dealing with the consequences of his reckless decisions. But one day, Nabal's arrogance nearly cost them everything. At this point in the story, David was not yet king. He was a fugitive, leading a band of 600 loyal warriors. These men, skilled in battle but living in exile, had been wandering the wilderness, taking refuge wherever they could. Now, David and his men had spent months unofficially protecting Nabal's shepherds in the wilderness. They ensured that raiders and thieves didn't harm the flock, providing a service that could have cost Nabal greatly had his herds been attacked. When the time for sheep shearing came, a season of celebration and abundance, David sent 10 of his men to politely request provisions from Nabal, reminding him of the protection they had provided. They did not demand, they simply asked. But instead of recognizing their kindness, Nabal sneered. "Who is this David? And who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants these days who are breaking away from their masters. Shall I take my bread and my water and my meat that I have slaughtered for my shearers and give it to men who come from I do not know where?" 1 Samuel 25 verses 10 to 11. It was an insult of the highest order. David's men returned with the message, and when David heard it, his warrior instincts took over. "Strap on your swords," David commanded. 400 men armed themselves, ready to ride to Nabal's estate and wipe out every male in his household. No negotiations. No mercy. Had David followed through with this, his reputation would have been permanently stained with bloodshed, killing in anger, not in righteousness. But that's when Abigail entered the story. One of Nabal's servants, terrified by what was about to happen, rushed to Abigail and told her everything. The servant knew that Nabal was impossible to reason with. But Abigail? She was different. She was wise. She wasted no time. Immediately, she gathered 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, roasted grain, raisins, and figs, a peace offering fit for a king. Without telling Nabal, she mounted a donkey and rode straight toward David's approaching army. Imagine the scene. David and his men, swords drawn, marching forward, their expressions dark with anger. Suddenly, in the distance, they see a woman riding toward them alone. Abigail dismounted and fell at David's feet, her words as strategic as her actions. "My lord, please let me speak. Pay no attention to that wicked man Nabal. He is just as his name means, foolish. But I, your servant, did not see the men you sent." She took responsibility for something she didn't even do. That alone was astonishing. Then she reminded David of his divine destiny. "The Lord will surely establish you as ruler over Israel, because you fight the Lord's battles. Let no wrongdoing be found in you as long as you live. My lord, do not have on your conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed or of having avenged yourself." 1 Samuel 25 verses 28 to 31. It was a masterful appeal. Abigail wasn't just trying to save her household, she was saving David from himself. In his anger, he was about to take justice into his own hands. But she reminded him that vengeance belonged to the Lord. David immediately recognized her wisdom. "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you today to meet me. May you be blessed for your good judgment and for keeping me from bloodshed this day." 1 Samuel 25 verses 32 to 33. David called off the attack. Because of one woman's courage, wisdom, and quick action, disaster was averted. Abigail returned home, and where was Nabal? Drunk. Oblivious. Hosting a feast fit for a king. The next morning, when he sobered up, Abigail told him everything that had happened. The news was so shocking that his heart failed him. 10 days later, he died. And what did David do? When he heard that Nabal had died, he sent messengers to Abigail with a proposal. "Come, be my wife." Abigail agreed. She went from the wife of a fool to the wife of a future king. Here are the lessons from the story of Abigail. 1. Wisdom is more than just intelligence, it's the ability to discern the right course of action in difficult situations. Abigail demonstrated quick thinking, strategic action, and humility, which ultimately changed the course of history. When she heard about Nabal's foolish response to David's men, she didn't waste time complaining or panicking. Instead, she acted swiftly, gathering a generous offering and riding out to intercept David before disaster struck. She understood that timing is crucial. A delayed response could have meant the loss of countless lives. Her wisdom wasn't just in what she did, but how she did it. Instead of confronting David with arrogance or demands, she humbled herself, spoke with respect, and reminded him of his divine destiny. She didn't just try to stop him, she gave him a higher perspective. This teaches us that one person's wisdom can change everything in families, workplaces, and even nations. If Abigail had remained silent, history could have looked very different. David might have carried out the attack, burdened with unnecessary bloodshed, and his journey to kingship could have been tainted. Many times, God places us in situations where our wisdom is needed to change the outcome. Will we be like Abigail, using discernment and courage to act, or will we hesitate and allow disaster to unfold? Wisdom is not passive. It requires action, discernment, and courage. How are you using the wisdom God has given you? How much better to get wisdom than gold, to get insight rather than silver? Proverbs 16 verse 16. 2. Anger is a powerful emotion. When not controlled, it can lead to destructive decisions. Even great men like David were not immune to this. When he heard Nabal's insult, his first reaction was rage. Instead of praying or seeking wisdom, he grabbed his sword and ordered his men to prepare for battle. His anger nearly caused unjust bloodshed. This is where Abigail's wisdom shines. She knew that meeting anger with anger never works. If she had approached David with her own frustration, trying to argue or blame him, the situation could have escalated. Instead, she approached him with humility and wisdom, speaking in a way that calmed his emotions and redirected his focus to God's greater plan. This lesson applies to us today. When we act in anger, we often make regrettable decisions. We say things we don't mean, hurt people, and even damage our own destiny. Many conflicts in marriages, friendships, and workplaces escalate because people respond with anger instead of wisdom. The Bible warns us. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Proverbs 15 verse 1. Abigail's response reminds us that peace is powerful. Wisdom allows us to diffuse volatile situations and bring God's peace into the chaos. Are you quick to anger, or do you seek wisdom before responding? Do you let emotions drive your decisions, or do you pause and seek God's perspective? David nearly made a terrible mistake because of one man's insult. What if you let go of offenses today and responded with wisdom instead? 3. One of the most remarkable things about Abigail is that she didn't try to manipulate or force justice, she left it in God's hands. She didn't argue with Nabal, trying to convince him to apologize to David. She didn't plead with David to spare Nabal just because he was her husband. She put her trust in God's justice and spoke words of wisdom, reminding David that vengeance belongs to the Lord. And God acted. 10 days later, Nabal died. Abigail did not have to lift a finger against him. This is a powerful lesson. When people insult, mistreat, or wrong us, our first instinct is often to fight back, defend ourselves, or seek revenge. But God calls us to trust Him to handle it. When we take justice into our own hands, we risk making emotional, hasty decisions that can cause more harm than good. David himself later wrote, "The Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still." Exodus 14 verse 14. Instead of retaliating, Abigail trusted that God would handle it, and He did. Are there situations in your life where you're trying to fight battles that should be left to God? Have you been hurt or wronged and feel the need to take matters into your own hands? This story reminds us that God sees, God knows, and God will bring justice in His own time. Can you trust Him to fight for you? 4. Abigail could have resigned herself to the fact that she was married to a fool and given up on making a difference. She could have let her circumstances define her, choosing bitterness, resentment, or self-pity. But she didn't. Even in a difficult marriage, she remained wise, courageous, and godly. She refused to be limited by her husband's foolishness. Instead, she chose to act with wisdom and integrity, no matter what situation she was in. Many people today feel stuck in a difficult marriage, job, or family situation. They believe their circumstances define them, limiting what God can do through them. But Abigail's story proves that no matter where you are, you can still live wisely, make an impact, and honor God. Your worth is not tied to your situation. You might be in an unfair or painful place, but God can still use you mightily. Abigail's wisdom saved lives and changed history. What if she had said, "It's not my problem," and stayed silent? Her whole household, including herself, could have been destroyed. Sometimes, God places us in difficult positions because He wants us to be a light in the darkness. So don't let your circumstances define you. Instead, let your faith, wisdom, and character define your story. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Matthew 5 verse 14. 5. Abigail's wisdom didn't just save lives, it changed her destiny. She went from being married to a foolish, arrogant man to being the wife of a future king. God saw her faithfulness and elevated her to a position of honor. This is a reminder that when we walk in wisdom, God positions us for greater things. Abigail didn't seek power, attention, or a way out of her marriage, she simply did what was right in God's eyes. And God rewarded her. Sometimes, we focus so much on where we are that we forget God sees where we're going. If we stay faithful, wise, and obedient, He will open doors and lead us to something greater. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up. James 4 verse 10. Abigail's story is proof that when we honor God, He will honor us. Are you walking in wisdom, trusting God with your future? What if the trials you're facing now are preparing you for a greater calling ahead? Abigail's story is a powerful reminder that wisdom, humility, and faith can change the course of history. She wasn't a warrior, a prophet, or a ruler, yet her bold actions saved lives, protected David's destiny, and positioned her for greater things. What about you? Are there situations in your life where wisdom, patience, and faith are needed? Are you trusting God to fight your battles, or are you trying to handle them on your own? Abigail didn't just change her own destiny, she impacted generations by making the right choices. Now, I want to hear from you. What part of Abigail's story stood out to you the most? Drop a comment below and let's talk. If you love Bible stories that come alive through animation and deep insights, don't forget to like this video so more people can see it. Subscribe to Scriptures in Pictures TV for more inspiring Bible stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story. God bless.